Hi, this is Debbie. Welcome back to Cheyenne Life. I guess this will be a part 2 because I have so many people in my house. I have my partner, my daughter, and my grandson that sometimes I keep getting interrupted. So anyway, we're back to the section where I have the pumpkin and where we will be converting into vegetable garden for the next season. And as you can see, I was quite surprised with this pumpkin because I think the vines are about 35 to 40 feet now. As you can see, back here is the beginning, way over there. And it just goes and goes and goes and goes around the tree and keeps going out that way and then splits off and comes back around and has started to wrap around the tree again. Anyway, it does have 2 pumpkins on it right now. Let me see if I can get up here and find one of them. There's one. And that one literally has gotten that big from about 4 days now. It started out as this size over here and went to this size in 4 days. So once they get started, they really get going. So anyway, this is another pumpkin that will be coming on, and it has already started getting bigger. It was a little bit smaller just yesterday, and we've got some more that'll be coming on, I think, on this vine. Yes, there's another one right here, and then there'll probably be some more that'll come on a little bit later, and they'll probably be smaller because there's still not quite enough time left for them to get done. But all of our flowers, as I was saying, are doing just absolutely beautifully, including the ones that were transplanted, that were growing in other pots. The basil, this is the second planting of third planting of basil, is growing by leaps and bounds. And this will be what will go back into the house to be grown through the winter, because that's what I do, is continue to grow basil and herbs throughout the winter in the growing room. Flowers are beautiful. And this is one of the clearance flowers I had picked up from Walmart for like $1. And I think it's called an Ipomoea. And it has some very interesting petunia-like purple blooms on it that are just beautiful. It had a couple on it earlier, and they have died back, and it'll probably bloom again soon. And there's that one that I picked up for like $1. And some manzanilla, and it is now getting ready to bloom. And this was some really distressed manzanilla that I had picked up on clearance as well. I think it was like $1.99. And here's the manzanilla that I had picked up earlier in the season. And I paid a lot more for this one than I did for these other 2 because these were on clearance. I think I paid upwards of like $12 for this one. And there's the sage that I had harvested, has already came back out beautifully, as you can see. And I'll probably go ahead and harvest again and then let it come back out again. And this is the thyme that I had harvested, just the regular thyme. And it is absolutely just overflowing the container and will need to be harvested again. So I will be doing that today and drying that. And again, the Brussels sprouts where I had trimmed them off earlier. And as you can see, they make an entire wheelbarrow full of leaves. You can eat the leaves. I'm not a fan of them because they tend to be a little tough. So if you want to try to eat the leaves, you would have to cook them a lot longer than planned, like you would do regular greens. And then the carrots down in there are just doing wonderfully. I actually have, let me see if I can go around here because I don't have an opening there. I do have some carrots that are quite large. Let's see if I can find them again. There they are. As you can see right there. And the carrots up in the front, the first row, were planted later, and they are a multicolor, like purples and whites and reds and oranges and yellows carrots. And those will probably be coming on probably about 3 to 4 weeks after these. And carrots are usually frost tolerant, so they'll handle a frost and keep on growing. Sometimes they'll actually overwinter and grow bigger the next season. So sometimes I'll do that. And here's another view of the beets as they're getting their 3rd and 4th leaves, as you can see. And I'll be planting more of those because they do get ready in about 55 days. And I think it's the dark ruby reds that I'm planting. And that is the big Caesar lettuce that I had mentioned earlier in the season. It did get bigger and is now ready to harvest because it is starting to kind of fall over in some places. And my collards have gotten bigger. And I actually went ahead and weeded all of that yesterday and put some more dirt around their roots so they'll get bigger, because I have one that's quite big right here. It just took off a little bit sooner than the others, and a couple more here that I have taken off bigger. That is a transplant. I don't think it's going to make it right in the middle. It might, because there's one leaf that is still pretty healthy, so it may pick up and start growing again. I hope so. And all of the rest of them are doing great. And you actually want to separate out your collards like this because they get quite large, as you can see. And if they shade each other out, then they will start stunting. And here is the cilantro or coriander. And it is now blooming, and I will let it go to seed because I've already harvested it probably 4 or 5 times now. And the spinach that was very, very tiny, I think, in the last video, is now filling out wonderfully. And my parsley has taken back off again. That parsley was actually pretty dead at the beginning of spring because I had done so much with it and had tried to clean it up and stuff like that. And a lot of it had died back finally. And this parsley was on its 5th season. So looks like it's coming back out now and doing great. I had transplanted some from other sections in the garden that had spread out by the seeds. There's one right there, in fact, and had put them back into that main area. And then I had some tarragon back there as well, and you can kind of see it that has started to take off. I only had one come up, but that's just fine because the plant spread out pretty big. So I look forward to the tarragon picking up and making it bigger. And I think I will let it go to seed and collect the seeds and try to get more started. Tarragon doesn't seem to grow in Wyoming very well, but I'm going to keep working with it and see what I can do. And actually see another little parsley plant that's came up that I'll need to transplant, 2 of them, in fact. This section is where I had taken out all of the onions, which are now over here, and I'm getting ready to go dry those. So those are the onions. They did not get very large this season because I had actually moved them from the typical place that I had them in, and I think I will move them back next season because I don't think they get enough sun. And I just did not pull the dirt away from the roots like I should have to make them get bigger bulbs. So this next season I will be doing that, and I will probably get a lot earlier start. I got a late start on these onions, but they had already had the greens. When they fall over and bend and that section starts to die off, then you want to go ahead and get those pulled because they are done. They're done making whatever they are going to do, and that's what had happened. And as you can see, my bunching onions and my chives are still doing wonderfully. And I'm still getting, 1 or 2 every once in a while to put in some dish that I'm making. And I actually have more bunching onions planted in the back that you can't see right now. They're up, but I don't know if you can actually see them or not. They're kind of spindly at the moment because they will get larger. There we go. Maybe you can see those. Zooming in a little bit. And they're all along the back section. And then I have more garlic chives right over here in this section. And the gutter kind of is in the way, but that's okay. It doesn't take up very much space. And I had a volunteer sunflower come up, as you can see, right over here. And I'll leave it and see if it actually does anything because it's getting kind of late in the season for them. And over here in this section where I'd taken out the onions, I went ahead and transplanted some cabbage, as you can see right here. And I had a whole bunch of them that had came up and decided to give them all a chance, so I separated them out and have transplanted some over here, and then I have one here in the front. And I think altogether there's about 13 cabbages, so we'll see if we get any more cabbages for the rest of the season. Cabbages are frost tolerant, so they'll handle frosting several times over before freezing actually kills them off. It takes a hard freeze in order to kill cabbage off, and they'll continue to grow all the way through the cool season and get bigger. And I planted some radishes here, as you can see, that are doing wonderfully. I'll be thinning those out so they make some good bulbs. And I'm going to actually plant some more radishes as well, so I'll have a second crop coming in a little bit later than these. And this was the garlic. And I actually dug one out yesterday. I don't think that they are doing as well as they should, so I'm going to definitely do a raised garden bed next season with garlic in it, because I think that the ground is either too hard or something like that. And I think this was a soft neck variety, and I've gotten word that hard neck variety is better. They have garlic bulbs on them. They're just not very large, but they'll be enough for us through the winter. And then the other patch of cilantro is right here, and it is also getting ready to go to seed, which I will let it continue to do because it's also been harvested 4 or 5 times. And then I also have my acorn squash, which is now starting to bloom. And we'll be having acorn squash very, very soon on it. And the lettuce, like I said, that I had planted did not do very well. I think it was just still too warm. So I went ahead and turned that part of the soil over, and I will be planting something else here, probably more beets. And then I had some cucumbers that came up volunteer. So I had transferred them into more of a row yesterday and transplanted them, and so far they seem to be making it okay. Sometimes it shocks the system. It shocked this one a little bit, but the other one seems to be doing pretty well. Good, how are you? Good morning. So that is some neighbors that had came by yesterday and actually wanted to tour the garden. They had been looking at my smaller garden outside and out in the other section. And I just went ahead and brought them on into the yard so they could see the rest of the garden. And they were just absolutely shocked at the artichoke and the Roma tomatoes that I grow. But everything is still doing wonderfully as far as Roma tomatoes and squash and the artichoke. The artichoke is actually quite large now. Let me see if I can go ahead and get over there. And you can see that. So let me see if I can do a comparison here with my hand. And I've got a wasp that's coming around. As you can see, it is about normal artichoke size. And then it has 1, 2, 3, 4 more that are smaller out on the sides. So it looks like it has one main bloom and then a few smaller ones. And that is the yellow squash and zucchini. My clematis that is just growing by leaps and bounds and blooming all over the place. And my red curry squash that is on the trellis. They're getting much bigger, and I'm actually having some more that are coming on. And I will have another zucchini to pull probably tomorrow, as you can see down in there. And I have been gathering tomatoes. I had a few of them that had cracked from us having dry weather. We have not had any rain substantially the entire summer here in Cheyenne, which happens because this is more of a deserty kind of climate. So I had some of them crack, and I guess it was from weather or water inconsistency. So I went ahead and started watering them more morning and night now, and that seemed to really do the trick. And also I put in some magnesium and calcium and fertilizer, organic, and they have really started picking up. So I probably have anywhere from 30 to 50 large tomatoes on these plants now, and they have got more coming on, as you can see down in there. And they are now probably 3.5, 4 feet tall. I think the last time I updated they were about 3 feet. And this one is actually starting to break the tomato cage down. So I had put 2 stakes in here to hold that up because it has so many tomatoes on it that it is weighing them down. And as you can see, these tomatoes are not small. They are quite large. This is the beef steaks, and they're probably about 1 pound each. And they'll get larger, and that one's actually starting to turn. And that's what started happening, is I had some that were turning on the bottoms and some that had started splitting. Like I will show you right here. I've got one left that had started splitting right here. And I had taken all the other ones off that were split, because you can actually remove tomatoes at any point. Like I could remove these tomatoes right here, take them in the house, and they will go ahead and turn red. Doesn't matter what size they are. I did that experiment a couple of seasons ago when we got an early snow. And when it started snowing, I ran outside, gathered all the tomatoes, took them inside, put them on the windowsills, and every single one of them were delicious and turned red. So I'm not happy with the Jetstar tomatoes that I have gotten. I have found out that they tend to be kind of sprawling, even though they're staked and tied. And they also are inconsistent, I think, in the size of the tomatoes throughout. I've got large ones on the bottoms, but they're smaller ones up at the top. Maybe they'll get larger, but I would not be surprised if they do not, because they do not seem to be growing very quickly. And those are actually the healthier plants, I think, out of all of them. Because as you can see, they are thoroughly green. They're probably about 4.5, 5 feet tall. And I have them staked, but yet they are bending over and spilling over, which is fine. I don't mind that because it has more tomatoes, but they're just not very large. So I think I will probably switch back to just all beefsteak tomatoes and just Romas. The Romas that I have are doing wonderfully. I'll show you those in a moment. Right now I'm going to show you something that I had been waiting for all summer, and that was my green beans. I had planted these 3 times because it seems to be a bad year for green beans. Sometimes that happens. If you have a bad season on one particular vegetable, you just will have a hard time growing that particular vegetable. I've had a hard time with beans, and I've had a hard time with cucumbers this year. I just gathered my first large cucumber, and I had planted those 2 or 3 times over. But now I finally have cucumbers and green beans coming in, and I have them in hordes of green beans, as you can see. So looking very forward to lots of green beans. I had 1 pot of green beans already, and I'll be doing some canning, it looks like, finally. And these are the sunflowers that I had shown you the last time that had not bloomed. They still have not bloomed, but they are just getting so tall. I thought these were not going to get very tall. They have proven me wrong. They are about 7.5, 8 feet tall now. And they were 4 to 6 feet between the 2 of them the last time I updated you. And there's the Roma tomatoes. You can probably see those throughout. And don't worry about what they look like, because Roma tomatoes, always the vines look like this to me every single year. No matter how much you water them, they will always look dry on the bottom because they're more of a dry climate tomato, I believe. And they still just produce hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes of Romas. I probably have 200 or 300 in here between those plants. And there again is another view of the Jetstar tomatoes. And although they have hordes of tomatoes on them, they're just not very large. They're supposed to get about 8 ounces, and I think I have maybe 5 or 6 in there that are the 8-ounce size. The rest of them are pretty small. So I hope they come on and they make something pretty soon, because I've already had my beefsteaks turning red, and these have not even shown a sign of turning red yet. So anyway, there is my large zucchini plants. The largest one, they're all large, but this one is just 5.5, 6 feet across or around. And I just pulled a zucchini off of it this morning, so it is still producing, as well as all of the other zucchini and squash plants. And I'm now getting watermelons that are starting. As you can see, this watermelon vine here, and you can see a watermelon. that looks like it'll be taking off, and I've got another one, if you can see it over there, and probably some more throughout, but the watermelons are now just taking over everything, which is fine because the other vines are starting to die back. So watermelons just through here, all the way out, except for one red curry that I had transplanted in here because I didn't have room. And it actually has a red curry on it. And they look like this before they start turning red, as you can see there. And it has a couple more that are starting. And remember the big green pumpkin. About 15 pounds worth of pumpkin is now starting to turn orange, so it is done in size. It may get a little bit larger, but I doubt it. But it is starting to turn orange, so it is almost done. And then I do have eggplants on my eggplant. And I think this other pumpkin is done as well, and it's probably about 10 to 12 pounds. And it did finally start turning orange. It's very difficult to see it down in there. There you go. So I'll have to try to go through the vines and get that pumpkin out of there. You wait till the vine connection to the actual pumpkin starts to turn brown a little bit, or a light gold, and then you can actually go ahead and harvest it. And then the corn, I'd already gotten 2 batches of corn off of this. And there is more corn coming on that will be going into the freezer. So the smaller ones are now taking off and have ears on them. And that will be likely going into the freezer because we've already eaten enough corn to satisfy us for this season. So the rest of it goes into the freezer or gets canned. And this is another red curry plant. And it has red curries on it all throughout. And it actually wraps around all the way this way, as well as the jack-o'-lantern kind of intertwines with it. And I haven't seen any crosses between the red curry and the jack-o'-lantern. I thought that the one that had turned out yellow was crossed with it, but it turns out it wasn't because the shape is entirely different. And then we'll head over to the smallest garden. Need to get out here and pick up some of the trash that kind of blows around into our section of the yard from, no offense, but bums that keep coming. There's a lot of bums in Cheyenne, and there's more and more coming in, and they kind of destroy everything. I hate to say that, but they kind of do. They come in and they steal things and get in our trash and spread it around everywhere. They're not very nice when you confront them. I'm sure that there are some out there that are different, but these that we have coming in, not. Anyway, there is the butternut squash that is in the smallest garden, and we do have butternut on them, and that will definitely get ready before the end of the season. And then we had the very strange looking pumpkin that just continues to be more strange. It is surely a pumpkin. It's very round. It's not very large, but seems to be a pumpkin. And I've got another one over in here. Let me see if you can see it. There it is. And then we do have some chamomile in here. This has actually started out as being the small herb garden. So I have chamomile, lemon balm, and some other basil, which is now starting to come out here. And I just pulled some turnips. Were the turnips yesterday, and added them to a pot of soup that we had. And they were very delicious, very actually sweet. I was surprised at how sweet they were. As you can see, we have more turnips down in there. So I just planted the turnips wherever there was a spot available because there's not a whole lot of room left, but it worked out great. And then this is the other butternut squash that has struggled because it didn't seem quite healthy, but it has butternut squash on it, so it seems to be healthy enough to support those. And this is the Armenian cucumber that I have not been able to do anything with. So no update really on that. And these are the smaller sunflowers that are now beginning to get heads and will probably be blooming. So that is it for the garden tour here in Cheyenne. Hope everyone is having a great day wherever you're at. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to see more videos. And we'll keep updating you on what we have left here in the Cheyenne garden. Have a good day.